Thank you for that welcome, everybody. I'm going to have to live up to that now, aren't I? So what you must remember from this talk, whatever else, is to be inspired. Luckily, that's part of my mission too, which we're going to talk about. So this is my favorite talk. So I'm guaranteed to butcher it now. But I've been doing this one for a little while. I should probably retire it, but every time I try to, I just keep wanting to get it back out there. Did you see that? I'm going to show this. But there's a reaction you need to give whenever the ball flies across, and that's, ooh. Oh, yeah. You know what, and let's start with an aside, but I did that as a gimmick. But it's actually one of the most useful things you can do on a PowerPoint thing, is put a thing like that as the last animation, because you never fall off the end of a slide. You know where you go to the next one accidentally? You can't do that. The ball stops you going on too far. Top tip. So you've learned something already. So who is this guy? That's me a few years ago. It's getting really bad now. I'm KanbanDan. It's a name I've come to embrace. We'll move on from that. It is what it is. And those badges tell you a bit about me. So I do Kanban. I'm an accredited trainer. I am a certified professional coach. And I'm also a licensed coach for rugby, which is why I'm here. This is a new addition. So I recently joined a company called Adventures with Agile, which is a great little Agile company. And one of the things we use to introduce ourselves is we draw a little mind map of usness. And this is me. So everything you need to know about me is on this mind map. You can see rugby's on there. I'm learning to play the drums. It's the R sign. I like Agile. Scrum's only a little bit of it, though. I try to be clever on that, but yeah, that's me. You see, you hadn't forgotten. So I want to start by telling you a story. This man is called Bill Beswick. He is a psychologist, a sports psychologist, one of the greatest in the world. He was the England rugby sports psychologist when I met him. I was fortunate enough when I did my rugby coaching training to be put in a small group of people that got invited to lots of events, one of which was to go to Twickenham and hear some talks by the current England coach, it was Stuart Lancaster, and the sports psychologist. And this guy told a great story that I would like to share with you. So it was around about tea time and he got a phone call and he says, hello. And this phone call was from a coach from a Major League Soccer first team coach in America. So that's the American Soccer League. And he says, Bill, it's a nightmare. It's a perfect storm. Oh, really? He says. Yeah, he says, well, half my first team's injured. The other half seem to be involved in this drugs scandal thing. So even if they aren't really directly involved, I can't play them just in case. We've got the best team in the league coming to town on Monday. We're playing on Monday night, which means we've got national coverage for the first time. And because of all this, we've sold out our stadium for the first time ever. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Bill says, that's okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the phone down now because I don't like your story. You can call me back in an hour and tell me a different story if you like, but I'm going to have my tea now. Bye. And he puts the phone down. An hour later, the phone rings. And he says, hello. And it's the same guy. He says, great news. Absolutely fantastic. We've sold out our stadium for the first time. We've got the best team in the league coming to try ourselves out against. And for whatever reason, I've got this really young, enthusiastic bunch of players who are prepared to do absolutely anything for me. Isn't it amazing? So what's the point of that story? Anyone?
Take the positive attitude.
So why should the coach have to take a positive attitude?
Because it's infectious.
Absolutely, it's infectious. The coach can instill attitude and positivity into the team, well, no matter what. And actually, you'd be surprised, up to 70% of the team's mood can come from the coach's mood. So if the coach is down, oh, we're never going to beat these, it's terrible, we're up against it, it's awful, then the team's going to be like, well, yeah, it is, isn't it? It's terrible. It's awful. I don't need to bother about this, do I? So That is something I learned from Bill, but thank you. This is a photograph I took from the RFU's coaching manual for rugby. And this shows, I think it's Warren Gatland there, was coach at the time. So talking about providing feedback. Invite questions to generate self-feedback. Limit information to 1 or 2 key points. Give specific, simple information. And keep it positive. So that's a great lesson for everyone out there. There's several of them. That's my favorite one. But the one before, number 3, was a big one for me when I was learning to be a rugby coach, because we went through my exercise. It went beautifully, by the way. It was fantastic. I had this homework to do. I'm going to show you the plan for it later. It was for backs, and I'm a forwards coach. They decided to give me this complex backs move. And this exercise worked beautifully, and the try was scored. And I said, lovely. And the coach says, I'm going to stop you there. I said, what's up? He says, do you know what you always say? I said, what? He says, you always say lovely. Do I? I can't imagine I've ever said lovely in my entire life. He says, but what was lovely? I said, the line that guy took, it was lovely. It went straight through the hole that we just created. He says, exactly. So tell him the line was lovely that he took. So be specific in your feedback and keep it positive. Fantastic lessons. And again, the whole point of this is, are we talking about rugby? Are we talking about Agile? Or are we talking about coaching? So it was 2013 when I took the coaching course, and I expected to hear a lot about rugby. In fact, I was hoping to learn a lot about rugby because I know a lot about the forward skills, but the back skills are this kind of weird stuff that goes on with people who use a lot of hair gel, as far as I was concerned. And so I learned a lot about these things. Principles, values, culture, the coaching process, developing people, skills acquisition, and okay, some rugby stuff as well. But that was the point. The context was rugby. The topic was coaching. And it made me just sit there and go, I'm a professional Agile coach. I've been doing this for years. How could I have not even thought to look over the fence that other people might have been doing coaching for a while and that we could learn something from that? Then it made me think, how arrogant am I? How arrogant are we as a group that we don't think about learning all these lessons from all of these great coaches that we've had, and that it might not actually be applicable in our context? And of course it is. I always love finding out where the boredom threshold gets with the crowd on that one. We're not quite there yet. We're still quite positive in the ooze. That's good. So this is, whenever I put a quote up, the quote is from the Rugby Coaching Manual. Principles is the cornerstone of successful coaching. So, obviously you know the rugby principles, don't you? Contest possession, go forward, provide support, create continuity, apply pressure, score points. And that's not really much use in the workplace, I don't think. The point is exactly that. These are principles that are context sensitive. But they're not my principles. I subscribe to these principles. And that made me think about the Agile principles and the Kanban principles and the other Kanban principles and the other Kanban principles that we have. They aren't mine. I subscribe to them and use them in the right context. And that's the thing. We build on the principles. The principles are what make the thing that we want it to be. And I want to introduce this word, congruence. This is something I'm very keen to talk about. Are we all heading in the same direction? Is your strategy for coaching, actually pretty waterfally while you're trying to coach Agile? Is your strategy for transformation waterfally? You're trying to transform to Agile. That's going to jar. So we can't have a set plan to transform Agile, for example. You can't have a waterfall plan to Agile. You've got to be more adaptive. You've got to be more context sensitive. So congruence to me is key, and being congruent to the principles you're trying to teach. Okay, I'm going to move it on from there because I've got some funny looks in the room. Values. A direct quote from the coaching manual. Values cannot be imposed. They need to be agreed in order for people to abide by them. How many times have you, as Agile coaches, done value sessions where you got everyone to sign a piece of paper or take a photograph of someone shaking a hand or something like that, where we've agreed our values for this team, for this organization? Turns out we didn't come up with it. Oh well. So treads. Treads are the rugby values. Now these, I think, can be taken anywhere. Okay, you have to work hard on the last one. I struggle with this last one because the man in the middle, but it's an old long-standing word, so I'm living with it. It is what it is. But teamwork, respect, enjoyment, discipline. These are all things that we see in Agile. I don't know if you come across disciplined Agile, for example. It's an interesting approach, and it's about making sure that we do have the discipline in Agile, because actually, good Agile has lots of discipline baked into it. And where you don't have lots of discipline baked into it, you should probably look at disciplined Agile delivery, because you need to bake some in. And things will not go well if we don't keep our discipline as a team. But similarly in rugby. So I like this little set of values. It's something I can easily remember, because treads works. Mnemonics are good. How to scare an Agile coach. Hands up if you would cast yourself as a Scrum Master or coach. Ooh, that's around about 2/3 of the room. Plus some people who are too scared to put their hands up. That's fine. Hands up if you've ever mentored somebody. Yeah, okay, that's pretty much everyone in the room's a coach then. Managed? Yeah, there we go. So you're all coaches, sorry. So what's your coaching philosophy? Anyone thought of one?
It's about the other person. It's not about you, it's about the other person.
It's not about you, it's about the other person. That's a good one. But the point is, there isn't an Agile coaching philosophy out there, is there? There's not a Scrum philosophy. I've got a philosophy and it's mine. You've got a philosophy and it's yours. And I would challenge you to have a philosophy. Because I've talked about congruence, going in the same direction. How can you go in the same direction to something when you don't know what that thing is? What of you are you bringing? Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? Would people be able to tell? So that's why I want to talk about philosophy. By the way, every single rugby coach that's been on the coaching course has a stated coaching philosophy. Even if it's just a photograph, that's fine. And that's my point. My philosophy is my own, and it's of me. And hopefully everything I do in my job will align to it. I'm looking at Georgina, because I'm working with her right now, and I'm hoping you recognize it when you see it. Because hopefully it follows in that the job I'm doing is based on my philosophy, and I am congruent. If I'm not, then I need to work harder at it. So it's how we apply the principles and values that we subscribe to. It's how we do it ourselves. And that's really important. The philosophy to me was the ooh moment. When I sat down and thought, I do this for a living. And there are loads of amateur rugby coaches all over the country, and they've thought harder about how they're doing this than I have. And I'm a day rate contractor, Agile coach. Okay, I need to do some thinking. So I did. And I came up with a coaching philosophy because it helps me maintain clarity and direction and helps me align my behaviors with my values. And so when I wrote this down in my coaching manual, it says, fun, focused, fair. Help players be the best people they can be. That's what I thought about my rugby. I coach young boys. They're currently 14 and 15-year-olds, so the under 15s for this year at my club, Chobham. And this is what I'm thinking when I'm coaching them on a Sunday morning or Wednesday night, is how can I make sure that they're having fun? How can I help them focus? Because 14-year-old boys aren't known for that. But also be fair and let them enjoy it. And did I mention fun? Focused, but still fun. And I don't really want to worry about them being the best players. I know that's going to sound weird, right? I'm a rugby coach, and I'm more worried about them becoming better people than I'm worried about them becoming better players. And this isn't because I think that's a good idea, it's because the Rugby Football Union thought that was a good idea, and I went, they've got a really good point here. 99.99% of rugby players in this country do not get paid to do it, they pay money to do it. They're doing that because it helps them improve and helps them feel belonging to something. And it is a big family, more than any other sport I've come across, certainly. But this is to help them be better people. And I thought, what's that like at work? Is it better Agile I want, or am I trying to help people? And this really struck a chord with me. In fact, it's one of the reasons I work with Adventures with Agile, is we have a vision for the company to make people's working lives better. And it's kind of like the set a trap for me, as far as I can see, by stating that as a vision for the company. Well, that's something I can buy into. I want to make people's working lives better. That's something I'm really passionate about. I want to help people be better. So it was really easy for rugby. That's what I came up with, and I did it in the classroom, and I wrote it down. And I thought, what about my work philosophy? So I wrote down lots of words that were important to me, and then I strung them together. So this was my first ever coaching philosophy for Agile. And my favorite bit about this one is that the bottom line says above all. Okay, only me then, but I thought that's kind of cool. Be disruptive. Ooh, that was good. Because I really needed to remember to be disruptive in my job. But anyhow, that was my version 1, and I tweeted it, and I got really quite upset on Twitter when someone said, yeah, that's good, I'll have that as well. I thought, hang on a minute, no, that's mine. I don't mind you borrowing it, or using bits, or use the whole lot if you want. But the value in it wasn't in actually having it. The value in it was coming up with it. It was actually working out, what is of me? What am I in this for? What am I trying to achieve? And you're missing out on that whole point. And it turns out on Twitter, it's really hard to change people's minds and not just have a fight with them, so I had to back off. But it did make me think. Oh, yeah. So I then went to a conference, and I won't say which one, and it had a closing keynote speech, which was literally the most boring event of my life. Seriously, if you're as bored now as I was then, please just walk out. Do not feel you've got to suffer in silence. But I was stuck in the room. I couldn't get out, possibly. And I thought, what the hell? I can't listen to this any longer. So I came up with a new coaching philosophy that tied both sides together and made use of the hour. And that is a photograph of a bit of a post-it note that lives on my Mac. That's my philosophy. Simplify and inspire in a fun, safe way. Always be positive, open, and transparent. And probably doesn't say half another million things that I think should be in there, but I think the brevity works. I can almost remember it when I try to. But I think the important things I've mentioned already there, be positive, always. Because no one's going to listen to you moaning and do anything differently. But simplify things. I don't like that we often, for example, in the world of forecasting, we go to some deep maths pretty early on. And I don't like that. I think we actually hurt people with that. So how can we make it simpler? How can we help people at GCSE level without having to go to degree level stuff? So simplification is really important to me. I want everyone to come to the party. I think the hardest step on the ladder is always rung 1. So let's get people onto rung 1 of the ladder and then help them on their journey further up and point them at all these specialisms. I'm not saying we don't need the specialisms. I'm saying we need to talk about the step 1. I like to think of Brian Cox when I say this, because look at the stars. But you know, there he is. He's a nuclear physicist, a particle physicist, working on the Hadron Super Collider off in CERN, trying to sort out the Higgs boson and all that kind of thing. But he's making TV programs to say, hey, isn't science cool? And look at this big stuff, and actually let's get people involved in it, because that might get some more people interested in science, and then they can go off to university and learn about particle physics and pull their hair out when they learn about quantum and all those wonderful things. But let's always welcome people into the space in the first instance, because actually psychology will tell you that in-group reinforcement will mean that we try and push people out a little bit. We aren't very welcoming. We use arcane language. We use Acronyms. How many organizations do you wander in where you have to spend ages learning the acronyms that we use here? And that's all in-group reinforcement, right? We're in a psychology group, I can talk about this. Actually, we want to throw those away. If you've ever worked at Government Digital Service, you'll know their rule on acronyms. The only acronym you're allowed is GDS. Everything else, you have to tell people all of the words. And even if you're saying BDD to a room of people that are using BDD, someone will say, what's BDD? Even though that's their job, behavior-driven development, because they always call people out on the acronyms. Of course, there might be one person in that room who doesn't know what BDD means. And let's make it inviting and welcoming to everyone. Let's break the in-group reinforcement and welcome people into our group. So that's important to me. I've got passionate, sorry. Okay, so that's where I am with that. I think that's version 4, by the way, of philosophy. I've skipped a few steps. So, the end of last year, isn't that like best? That was bad enough when he did it, but when she rocked it out as well, that's just like, whoa. So at the end of last year, I went on the Lisa Adkins Coaching Agile Teams class. If you haven't been, seriously, it's amazing. It was the best 3 days I've spent in a classroom. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, I'm going back later this year for her facilitation class, because I really want to go and get some more of this stuff. In there, we talk about coaching stance. The idea it's more like this one. So I'm going to guess she's an Aikido teka. She does Aikido. But the point is, here I am in a stance where I'm ready to do something. So if I'm going to go into some coaching, I want to take a coaching stance where I'm ready to help you. And I'm putting my position, and like you said, it's about you, not about me. That's part of the stance of being a coach. It's not about me. It's not about me doing an ego reinforcement. It's not about me looking good coaching you. It's about me helping you do the thing you do. I've singled you out now, sorry, because you said something. Well, there you go. So the idea of taking that stance and be prepared and actually getting ready and going through that process of, okay, let's remember the coaching arc. Let's remember the things I'm going to do, and actually getting ready for the thing. And I align that with my philosophy. It's actually thinking, when I'm coaching, always be positive. Simplify and inspire. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make things easier for that person, not me. So I want to tell you about someone else. I mentioned Bill Beswick earlier. I was that taken with his talk. I went and had a quick chat with him afterwards and mentioned what I did for a living. And he talked about a guy called Joe Ehrman. And this is Joe. And that's him in his head as a defensive tackle in the NFL. Now, NFL, American football, is a pretty tough sport, played by pretty tough people. And the defensive tackles are the tough guys in the tough sport doing the tough thing. Because they're the guys in the middle of the line that are just trying to go forward. And they're usually big, huge, massive, aggressive, angry people. So Joe used to be big, huge, massive, angry, and aggressive. And he went through a bit of a journey. And if you read this book, Inside Out Coaching, it will tell you all about that. It's not a comfortable read. I will say that. It's well written. It's not a bad read in terms of the literature. It's just a tricky read. And his viewpoint is that you can't coach other people until you understand your own journey and why you're where you are, how you come to be where you are. And that's why he calls it inside-out coaching, because it's understanding your inside before you come out. And that sticker there says, the most important coach in America. I think it's Forbes magazine came up with that quote. You won't have heard of him before, I'm guessing, most people, because what he does is he coaches high school football, and he coaches coaches of high school football. And his stated mission, his philosophy, his intention, is to change the vision of masculinity in America, which is a fairly major thing. So I deal with teenage boys, and I've had them since they were like 11-ish. There's a group of boys that have dwindled a little bit, and some of them find girls, some of them find other sports, weird people. You know, don't want to play rugby so much. And, you know, we end up with a set of them. They're now about 15, and they've been through a lot of changes. Some of them are still going through a lot of changes. And there's lots of weird things that they're discovering. And actually, society doesn't make it easy. Society makes them feel like they should behave in certain ways. especially when you think of rugby players. We all know what we think of rugby players, right? You've already got a stereotypical image. Like I said, imagine a video games developer. You end up with an automatic sort of little box, and then you think, oh yeah, but there are those other people too. And I'm sure they're not all like that. Actually, most of them are. Very weird industry. But I used to work there for 9 years, so I've seen a few of them. But in rugby, there's this weird sort of view of how you're meant to be. And it's meant to be, good bloke, jolly good bloke, 10 pints, and off we go, and tough, and beat 10 bells out of each other, and shake hands afterwards, and so on. But actually, society expects a lot of these people, and they don't really get a lot of instruction from people about what masculinity really means. American football even more so. So a lot of what he's doing is to try and change that. Because if you look at most NFL players, again, you've got a stereotypical view of them. They tend to be people who've come from a very privileged background, if they're playing quarterback, or everyone else tends to come from a really underprivileged background, and they're working really hard to get out of that state. But then they've suddenly gone from a lifetime of upbringing of being very poor to being very, very rich. And everyone around them saying yes, and putting cameras in their faces and doing all those things. Funnily enough, a few of them go off the rails. And so Joe certainly did. He went on a drugs thing. That's what ended his career, recreational drugs, as with many of these guys, and actually trying to change that view of what society should be expecting of masculinity when you're in these very tough sports is a huge deal. I'm waxing lyrical because I think that's a really important thing, and it's something I try and do myself when I'm working with the boys that I work with, and try and help them through their journey as well, because it's about helping people be better. The context is rugby, or the context is Agile. It was an NFL ball and it had a tight spiral and everything. That was like literally 15 minutes of my life to make that ball go like that. Oh yeah. There was no little wobble. It was fantastic. Anyway, I recommend that book. I recommend that PowerPoint works. Okay. Right, it's working now. But Joe asks these questions. Please don't think that you should have an answer to all of these questions right now, but please do think about these questions and go away and come up with some answers, especially if you're going to take up my challenge of coming up with a stated philosophy for your coaching. Question 1. Why do you coach? Simple for some people, not so much for others. Don't worry, you can get photos at the end. Slides are going to build up. 2. Why do you coach? Oh, it's already built up. You see, I thought I was going to have to click. Why do you coach the way you do? The third one's the one that got me. How does it feel to be coached by you? Then what does success look like? So I forgot to say at the beginning, the right time to ask any questions is now for any given definition of now. I can always tell you, no, we're talking about that later, but if you've got a question, please do ask. But I think they're really tough, and I think if you can answer those quickly without thinking, I can't, and I've thought a lot about them. I'm still working on my answers, and every time I think about them, I have to think again. But I think I coach because I want to help people, which is interesting if you go on coaching classes, actually. But there you go. I want to help people. I want to help people do things better. I coach the way I do because it's the best way I know so far to help people. And it's for that answer that I've spent an awful lot more money on training in the last year than I have in the previous 5 before. Because it's the best way I know so far, and there's so much I need to learn. How does it feel to be coached by you? So I spend a couple of seconds in the happy place, then I move to the sad place, and my head dwells there. I think at the times it hasn't worked. I was fortunate enough once to give this talk in a room where a couple of my colleague coaches that I'd worked with were in the room, one of which had been in the same organization before me, and the other of which was in that same organization after me. So Adam was in first, and they loved him. He was great. He is great. He's a fantastic coach. but they really loved him, but he was leaving to travel. Then I went in there. I wasn't there very long, just a couple of months. And then my colleague Helen was in there, and they loved her. She did a great job. So I don't know about you, that felt a bit weird that I was only there a little while and it didn't work. It always worked before. And I comforted myself. They really liked Adam. They loved Adam. I was the rebound coach. Yeah. It wasn't my fault. It was them. They weren't ready for what they asked from me, and the fact that I was not a fungible thing. I wasn't completely interchangeable with Adam. I was different. And that's it. It was them. It wasn't me. It must have been because Helen went there, and she's quite a lot like me, and she did really well. And it took me a little while to come to terms with actually, no, it was me. And the reason I know it was me is because if I keep saying I was the rebound coach and it was them, what would I do differently next time? How did it feel to be coached by me right then? Not so good, I'm guessing. Some people, absolutely. In fact, I met one of them last night, and he's doing great, and it must have felt good. He gave me the thumbs up. But the senior management team asked, so what is it Dan does? Why is he here? Why are we paying him to be here? And that was when I got the feedback, far too late to fix it, of course. It was one of those, moments. So I need to do that differently. It was me. I need to take ownership of that in order to change. So I don't know about you, that one's the doozy. And I've got a photograph later in this deck which shows what I think success looks like. But again, think about what success looks like for you. I did the double finger point. Next time we're doing that. Hey. See, it's still NFL. So I like Joe. Joe's one of my favorites. Please just click. There we go. Congruence. I mentioned it earlier. How do you ensure your actions and your words align to your philosophy or stance? If you do, you're being congruent. The idea is the big arrow is what I'm trying to do. The little arrow is all those things I do every single day. Hopefully it looks like that. And if you saw me in my job and you've seen what my philosophy is, you'd say, yeah, he's trying to simplify things. He's trying to inspire people. He is being open and transparent. It is fun, but it's also safe. Hopefully that's what you'd all say. What I really don't want is that. That's what I fear it sometimes looks like. My direction's this way, but none of the arrows are actually heading that way. And this is one of the reasons I think I want to challenge you all to have a philosophy. Is because if you take away the big arrow, how on earth do you line up your little arrows? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to do the job you're doing? I'm not criticizing anybody. I went for years without one of these things. But I just had this moment of, wow, I need one of those. Otherwise, how the hell am I going to be lined up? I don't want to confuse people. I want to be lined up. I am going to tell you about one of the person. I had the very good fortune to work with a lady called Liz Keogh while I was working at Barclays. She's a fantastic coach. And I was putting together, I think actually I was just going through this deck for another conference and adding slides as these things grow. That's what happens. And I said to her, Liz, can I tell you what I think your philosophy is? And she said, yes. And I said, well, I think it's this, 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 and this. And she went, yeah, pretty much. That's about it. I'm not going to say what it is. That's her business. This isn't her talk. If you want to ask her, ask her. But the point was, I could tell just by what she did, what her philosophy was. And it was also obvious to me that she had one, because all of the things she did were heading in the same direction. I actually stole the word positive from her as well as what I got from the rugby thing. So that's something she does. But I thought that was it absolutely blew me away how congruent she was. And that's what made me put this slide together, actually. Because it's like, wow, I wish I was as good as that at being like that. But I'm still trying. I'm learning. It's what every martial arts master is meant to say, isn't it? How long did it take to become a master? I don't know. I'm still practicing. But I really am still trying with that. And I don't know. Hopefully I'm getting good. We'll see. I don't know. Back to the rugby coaching manual. So the coaching process. A coach like me. Big guy with a pen behind his ear. But plan, do, review. Sound familiar to anybody? I would hope it does, because Rugby does it that way. Agile talks about inspect and adapt. If you do systems thinking, then we've got the PDCA cycles. Doing lean startup, you're going to do the build, measure, learn, crank handles. You're talking about Kanban, we talk about validated learning. We talk about Kaizen or continual improvement. In Kanban, anyone not know Kanban? And feeling brave? Kanban rocks as a complexity model. See anything on YouTube by Liz Keogh about Kanban. It will be an hour of your life well spent. But probe, sense, respond for dealing in the complex zone. The idea of doing something and then reviewing and getting better. It's a fairly old idea. Inspect and adapt, I think, perhaps could be written trial and error. If you're a kindergarten child, try something, make it better. I'm really starting to worry about this device now. Come on, Mac, you can do it. So coaching approaches. So the Rugby approach talks about 4 different levels of coaching. We talk about tell. So I make the decision as coach and I tell you what you're going to do. It's a bit like lecturing, really. I'm going to tell you all about this, so you have to go and do it. Sell. That's also a bit like lecturing. It's a bit more mentory, if you like, but I've still decided, but now I'm going to sell you the idea, sell you why you should do it. Then we move on to the higher level of coaching, ask. I'm going to outline the situation, I'm going to invite suggestions from the group. These are all verbatim quotes for the coaching manual for Rugby, by the way. Then the last level is delegate. I'm going to set a problem, and I'm going to let you guys work out how to do this. So imagine, if you will, some happy day where I'm working at Penny Hill Park as the England forwards coach. You never know, it might happen. Come on. Anyhow, I've had the luxury of visiting there with the coaching program and meeting the incumbent, Steve Borthwick, on the scrum garden. Everybody needs a scrum garden. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, the idea is, how do you, as a coach, work with people who are better at the thing you're doing than you ever were or ever will be? Because that's this level. How do you help those people be better at what they do, even though they're better than you and know more about it than you? And this is how you do it. You delegate problems to them. You come up with scenarios. You help them to get better at doing what they do. So you can always help as a coach. You don't have to be the expert. In fact, if you're going to do professional coaching as an approach, professional coaching doesn't mean coaching as a professional. It means a specific discipline within coaching. And we'll come to that a bit later. Context can actually be a hindrance. You want the coachee or the client to bring all the context and have that in their head. And you're using powerful questions to help them find their own way forward. And actually, you knowing answers will often make you stray into mentoring by accident and tell them your answer. So that's Rugby. That's the Rugby approach to coaching. If you're an Agile coach, you might go for teach, mentor, professional coaching, and facilitation. Some people have been surprised when I put facilitate in the end as sort of that highest form at the bottom of the page. I've done that again, haven't I? But I honestly think facilitation is where where it's at. I think we all learn facilitation skills when we're learning to be a Scrum Master, and we take them on and we keep them going, and perhaps as an Agile coach, you're expected to facilitate bigger things. But I think true facilitation, what I'm trying to shoot for, hopefully one day down the line, once I've been on my facilitation class, is to facilitate organizations to do Agile transformations to themselves. To not be seen as the transformer or the agent of transformation, but facilitating the body, that group of people, to do that job to themselves. And I think that's really where we get our highest form of returns, because it's going to stick well beyond my time with that organization. So when would you use it? Safety. So in my pocket, I have a whistle. I was showing Georgina on the train, actually. My whistle is an Acme Thunderer. It's only a little one. And I proudly said, I haven't blown this whistle in a year. And that's true. I'm a rugby coach, and I don't blow my whistle because I only use it in safety situations. If I blow my whistle, it's because everyone needs to stop what they're doing right now, because someone's going to get hurt if we don't. So if I've got little Johnny, your 14-year-old son, rocks up to Chobham Rugby Club, and he's never played rugby before, but he fancies it because he saw the England Grand Slam that we're going to get this year again. We'll see. And wants to play rugby, then I would be daft to give him a ball and say, right, go and play in with the other guys and see what happens, because the likelihood is he's going to get hurt. He doesn't know enough to be safe yet. So as a safety thing, the first thing I'm going to teach him is, anybody? How to fall down. So what do most people do when they fall down? Only if they've fallen down correctly. Because most people put their arm out to save themselves. There's an interesting point about that angle there. It's not 90 degrees. The body isn't made to let that happen. So if you put your weight there, you're going to snap the two bones here and break your wrist. And I'm going to have to explain to mummy of little Johnny why little Johnny's in an ambulance going to hospital to get their broken wrist mended. So we teach them knees, hips, shoulder, roll, and actually hold onto a ball tightly with both hands while you're doing it, so you can fall safely. The second thing I want to teach you is how to tackle. And I'm going to use lots of little mnemonics, but the main one is cheek to cheek. The reason being, if you imagine, can I borrow you, sir? If you were, I won't tackle you, but if you were coming towards me down this channel, if I go cheek to cheek, I'm here. And this guy goes down over this shoulder here, or backwards there. And either way, my neck's nice and safe. If I go here, well, firstly, it's slightly uncomfortable in a social setting. But secondly, the entire pressure of that player and my momentum forward's on my neck. And then I'm going to have to explain to little Johnny why he's in an ambulance with a broken neck. And that's going to not go well. Never mind for poor little Johnny who's got a broken neck. Thank you, sir. So cheek to cheek. And it's easy. Anyone can remember cheek to cheek, especially when you say it like that. And then you think Simply Red. The lady in red. No, it's not Simply Red, is it? It's Chris Rea. Is it? The lady in red is dancing with me. Cheek to cheek. Christa Berg, there you go. And then we do Ring of Steel and into there. And actually nowadays, because we have to tackle lower, we slap their calves on the way in, because that brings our shoulder down to pocket height. And then they all fall over. So anyhow, learning to tackle safely is the first thing. Learning to tackle well would be good. So if you talk to Paul Gustard, the England defence coach, he talks about how you step in with your shoulder, or you step in with your shoulder that way and get the maximum impact where you want to hit so that it's going to delay the ball coming out. All these advanced topics, but I'm so like GCSE level compared to that. I just want you to be able to tackle without hurting your own neck. Because once we've got through that, and we've got through skills acquisition, you're going to be safe. And now, I can give you the ball and you can go and play. And you're going to get tackled, and you're going to tackle people, and you're going to forget about the wrist thing, and remember about the wrist thing. And you're going to remember the cheek-to-cheek thing, because it's silly. And hopefully, everyone has a good time. So, safety and new to this. So, we start off with, you do as I say. Move to, it's a good idea to do as I say, and this is why. And then we get into the, so, this is the scenario, this is where we are, what we're going to do about it. And you probably recognize that one from work quite a lot. Okay? I'm going to move on. So, this is the Agile coaching frameworks, from the Agile coaching, it's that thing, I can't talk. It's been a long day. The Agile Coaching Competency Framework from the Agile Coaching Institute. So that's Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade. And Creative Commons, I had to tell you who made it. But this is what we often call the X-Wing diagram. I don't think we've got license to say that, but it's a great way of understanding some of the things that decide what you're going to be if you're an Agile coach. If you want to learn about this, please do book yourself on the Lisa Atkins. And I think it's Michael's going to be coming over as well in October to teach us. It's a 3-day class. And certainly, like I say, it's the best class I've ever been on. bookable through Adventures with Agile too. But the assumption is you know this lean Agile stuff to a certain degree, because we're going to coach it. And then we have teaching, which is hopefully not all lecture at the front of the room, but probably from the back of the room, playing games and learning. Mentoring, which is one-to-one, but it's like that cell. It's I've got the knowledge, and I'm going to pass it to you. Professional coaching looks more like just, if you watched it, I'd be a lot more quiet. And I know that's really hard to imagine, but I have done it once or twice. I've managed to keep my gob shut and listening and then injecting, like I said, powerful questions at the right time to help the person who's being coached think about the problem in a different frame. Help shift them from one way of thinking to another way of thinking, but they're solving their own problem. And then facilitating a neutral process holder, only holding the process, not caring about the context at all. Have you noticed there's affinity for domain knowledge, less domain knowledge? Then there's an assumption you'll be good at one or more of these areas, whether it's transformation, the business, or technical. I don't think many people are going to say they're very good at all three of those. I think that would be very challenging indeed. But you need someone who's going to be able to help people implement your CI and your BDD model and your Cucumber and your Gherkins and all those wonderful things that I know the names of but not how to do. I sit more in this space here. I wish I knew more about the business, but I try to. But this is my area of, I think, expertise, if you like. In fact, I'm going to show you what my model looks like in a little while. So you can see one of the ways you can use this is to show people what you're good at. So you can now find people who are good at the other things and that are complementary with you. So, looking at the time, oh my, I need to start talking faster. So you probably saw my diagram at the beginning and saw the colourful bit of the top. Oh. The PowerPoint foo is strong in this one. So, Lean Agile, I think I know quite a lot about it, but not everything. There's quite a lot out there I don't know. I like to think I'm very good at teaching. I think that's my home space. That's my home quadrant. That's where I kind of come from, if you like. I like that. And mentoring as well. I spent last year focusing on professional coaching and improving in that area, and I still have more to go. And this year I'm going to start focusing on facilitation because I think that's something I can really help and will help with these things. I am definitely in this quadrant here, or not even a quadrant, sector I should say, a bit in here, and my technical is quite low. It says the formal assembly language developer. I know, it's amazing how things move. But that's one way of looking at me. That there. Come on, PowerPoint, you can do it. It's that clever thing. As soon as I put that clever thing in, it all slowed down. So, again, quote from the RFU menu. Planning is essential, but plans change. It had to be Eisenhower, didn't it? Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So, we need to align the plan with the long-term goals, but be flexible, he said to an Agile meetup group. Things will happen which require your plans to change, or change the plan, or indeed, changes to outcomes. So you might go in to a rugby match with a particular game plan that the team are executing, but then half-time happens and you need to change things up a lot. I don't know if you watch rugby, but if you do, you might remember the Scotland-Ireland game where Scotland unexpectedly beat Ireland. Ireland, who've just beaten the All Blacks for the first time in over 100 years and are on an all-time high, get beat by the Scotland, who are not expected to do very well at all. And the defence coach was really upset for Ireland, especially when the Irish head coach came and said, "You really changed your defence at half-time." He said, "No, we didn't. We played exactly the same defensive strategy first half and second half. Just the second half, we did it." Be flexible. You may need to change plan or change your intended outcome. But that's the point. He was really upset because they'd worked on something and it didn't work. But half-time, they were able to do something that changed it enough that suddenly the original plan worked. And indeed it did. It did change a lot in the second half, but Scotland still won, which I was delighted about. Sorry, did I mention half of the other coaching team in my rugby club are Irish? They never shut up when Ireland do well. So, I mentioned coaching plans. I'm sure you can all read this at the back, But this is my homework I was given between sessions, which is an attack from line out, slice with a 13 flat and 12 deep. Obviously, I'd never heard of this before until I started researching it and found out, if you've heard of a player called Manu Tuilagi, pretty much 99% of his tries scored for England are this move. Really, really effective, actually, if you've got a big 13. If you haven't got a clue what I'm saying, that's fine. Rugby, blah, 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 fine. But what I want to show you is how this plan is structured for a coaching session, which is how I'm going to set it up. Turns out I need balls, cones, and bibs for this one. And yes, I've got a mobile phone to ring an ambulance should I need to. And we've cleared the area already of any twigs. It says so here, twigs cleared. How did we set up? What's the focus area of the session? What are we trying to improve? Then an overview of the whole plan. We use this thing, I don't know how I use it in Agile, but my sense is there's a place for it. So this is something you might think of. We call it whole part whole. So we play a game, which is using the whole thing that we're trying to work on. So in this case, it's a particular attacking move from a set piece. And then we go to a part, so we focus on a particular set of skills within there and really focus on that with some game-based exercises. Game-based exercises are what we used to call drills. We don't do drills, they're all game-based now because game-based are more fun. But game-based exercises. And then we take it back to the whole again. So we play a game that should lead to a scoring situation, but for some reason doesn't, where we're playing, say, 4 attackers under 3 defenders, and for some reason we're not scoring. And then we focus on this particular thing of how we can do something to move the defense around in a particular way. And then we take it back to the game, and lo and behold, we score all those tries. So whole part whole. If you can think of a use for that at work, please let me know, because I haven't quite worked it out yet, but my instinct is there's something there. And that could be it, yeah. Kata could be a good example. I'm not repeating for patronisation, I'm doing it for the video. But yeah, kata could be it. And sorry, there's another one? So we're talking about the inception phase on dad. I'm not sure, but we need to chat later and see how that fits together. Because, yeah, kind of, but not quite. But the idea is the whole part holds here, and then the part's quite big, because that's the bit we're focusing on. Then it says the values. We actually plan which values from Rugby's values we're trying to target in this session. And then which skills area. And then how we're going to warm down. And this area here is for the coach's little retro at the end. So you'll talk to the players, get some feedback. You'll talk to the other coaches, get some feedback, and write down what went well, what didn't go so well, so we can adjust our plan for next time and then reuse it next year or whenever we need to go through the slice move. Oh. Yeah. So, retrospective. What would we do differently? Yeah, how does it affect us? I was surprised that retrospectives took a place in rugby coaching, but turns out really do. Moving on. Cynefin. So we all know Cynefin, right? No. Okay, that's Cynefin. So I did mention you should Google Liz Keogh. She's brilliant at talking about this. But it's a complexity sense-making framework where we talk about some things which are obvious, that's where project management and best practice works. Some things are complicated, like skills like writing code. This is where experts work well. Complex. This is where most agile needs live, initially at least, where we don't really know how to solve them, so we do something, probe, sense, and then respond. So do something like a safe-to-fail experiment, which is what a probe is. A bit more to it than that. Then we see how it went, and then change our plans. And chaotic zone, which is the house is on fire, and we need to get the wife and kids out. And ideally the dogs too. And I'd really like my telescopes and guitars. They're not looking good though. But I was quite surprised when we were doing coach training, and this kind of popped straight into my head. This is an agile thing, surely. But in rugby league, it turns out, so rugby league's a game they play in sort of what I call the Midlands, but some people call the North. Sheffield and Manchester and that kind of part of the country. You know, the bit that's further south than the northeast. They play this game called Rugby League, where it's 13 aside. And actually, the coaching is pretty prescriptive. If you do what I say, it's great. If not, get off the park. I'm paying you. You're meant to do what I say you do as a coach. And that's not what we do in rugby. In rugby union, proper rugby. Okay, that was contentious on purpose. Rugby league players are nice too. But rugby union, we coach players to make intuitive decisions on the field. The idea is, I don't want you to do what I say. I want you to do what you think's right, given what you know and given the scenario that's around you. And the reason for that is complexity. If you play rugby league, what happens is you get the ball and you jog it up, and I get tackled. I hold onto the ball. The tackler lies on top of me. I thrash about needlessly for 10 seconds. Nobody knows quite why, because the guy ain't getting off till the referee says. Eventually the referee says, he gets off and stands in front. I stand in front of him, put the ball down, roll it back to my mate, who passes it to the next guy, and the same thing happens. That's every contact scenario in rugby league is like that. That's very simple. It could be said it's quite obvious what's going to happen. When we're tackled, this is the scenario every single time. Now, if you watch rugby union, what you'll see is all sorts of weird stuff happens. How am I tackled? Am I tackled to the legs? Have I got a supporting player that I can give it off to? Is the supporting player telling me that they're there? Is there support on both sides? What's the defence looking like? Have I got the best jackling player in the world who's going to rip the ball off me on the floor? Have I got 5 or 6 defenders? Am I likely to be turned over? Am I not likely to be turned over? There are huge numbers of options of complexity of what's in front of me. So of course we have to coach intuitive decisions. Rugby union, rugby league, you use best practice. It's obvious. Rugby union, it's complex. Probe, sense, respond. Do something. Do something based on what you know. But yeah, Kanban in rugby, I was really impressed. So, the most influential piece of the coaching manual for rugby was the bit that said that coaching that develops people, not just players. And then, like I said, 99.99% of rugby players pay money to play rugby, not the other way around. So we talk about the 5 C's. So if you've done user stories, you know about the 3 C's. If you've done training from the back of the room, you know about the 4 C's. If you do rugby, you do 5 C's. It's one better. Competence, confidence, connection, character, and creativity. The most important of which is self-worth. There's a TV show, I don't know if they've done it for a couple of years now, but there's, I think, 8 seasons they did. Sky with a charity called School of Hard Knocks. And what they did is they went into really deprived inner city areas and found unemployed young men who would sign up to this program of learning to play rugby. And the idea was you get people who'd been in jail a lot or people who'd never had a job. And through teaching them some rugby, they would learn life skills. They would learn self-worth. They would learn to trust the person next to them to have their back. They would learn to trust themselves and to respect the people around and look after them. Even if you play rugby, you have a first responsibility, which is a duty of care to everyone else. So we often talk about tackles in the air or tip tackles, where you lift somebody up beyond 90 degrees. As soon as you pick somebody off the ground in rugby, whether you're on your side or theirs, you have a duty of care to look after that player. He is your responsibility, or she is your responsibility in the women's game, until they are put down safely. You can actually be penalised in rugby if you lift your own player at the line out, then let go of them in midair. You can be penalised for dropping your own player. That's part of the rules, because we have a duty of care, first and foremost, to everyone around. So learning respect, learning self-worth and to value other people, and learning a physical bond with people, it really helps a lot of these people. I remember there was a psychologist having a chat with one player. I think it was coaching session 3 he'd gone through, and he's at the side throwing up. And they said, "You all right?" "Yeah, it's just breakfast, didn't agree." "What did you have for breakfast before the session?" "Absinthe." Why would you have absinthe before coming here? Well, I knew it was going to hurt, and he was obviously an alcoholic as well, this guy. So actually helping him through those problems and learning that perhaps absinthe isn't the way to deal with them for breakfast is something that could help them and learn. And if you haven't seen School of Hard Knocks, I thoroughly recommend it. They're now doing Hard Knocks in schools. In fact, I nearly wore my T-shirt. I've got a School of Hard Knocks. They did a South London schools fundraiser, so they're now focusing not on just unemployed men, but kids who are being disenfranchised in the education system, the kind of kids that don't respond well in class, helping them to learn through rugby when perhaps they won't learn in an academic setting. So it's something I really passionately believe in the inner city and dodgy areas, as well as in leafy Surrey and Chobham, with certainly the 15-year-olds I work with aren't very underprivileged, I've got to say. Most of them, they do all right. But yeah, it's really important to me. We're nearly at the end. I think I'm probably over already, am I? If you've got a train, just go. That's fine. If you think it's worth staying, stay. I'll thank you for your feedback either way. So, skills acquisition. We all know the 3 stages of skills acquisition, don't we? Oh, cognitive, associative, autonomous. So cognitive. I understand that the safe way to tackle is cheek to cheek, and that if I slap the guy's calf muscle on the way in, my shoulder's going to be in the right place and I won't get hurt. I understand it, but understanding and doing are 2 separate things, right? So cognitive is I understand it. Associative is I'm now practicing. We're going to do some game-based exercise based on tackling so that you get a chance to learn it. And if you do it a couple of 1,000 times, you're going to be autonomous and just think, well, I've knocked them down, and that's fine. And that's a different level. You may notice this when people do Agile work as well. You have to practice and practice and practice and practice. How many times have you been doing Agile with people who have been on the path and they suddenly regress from out of nowhere back to how they used to do things? Is that familiar to anyone? That doesn't mean you're a bad coach. That is, if you go in the coaching class, we call it a zigzag. It happens. It's normal. It'll happen 2 or 3 times per person. It's fine. This is where we hug them and help them back on the journey. But yeah, absolutely, it hasn't become autonomous yet. They're still in the associative state with those skills. If you think about that as a system and try and think of the people you're coaching, are they at that level or at this level? It'll help you think about how you help them be better. You talk to them at the level they're at, not the level you hope they're at. That's different. Ooh. Photograph from the back of the book. They very kindly wrote it on yellow writing against a yellow background. But my PowerPoint foo is strong. A successful team rarely relates to talent. The coach is responsible for creating the right environment, which relies on the coach understanding the importance of continuous personal development and defined coaching philosophy. The vision must be clear and agreed. The coach should be able to facilitate, establish, and demonstrate core values leadership within the team. If you thought that came out of an Agile book, you wouldn't be surprised, right? Wait till you see the further reading. 5 dysfunctions of the team. If you haven't read that, by the way, it's available on Audible as an audiobook if you don't get time to read books. And everyone should read 5 Dysfunctions. It's a great book. But it's all about the culture. And that's what Agile is all about too. Rugby has a culture, Agile has a culture. Talking of culture, these lot are quite good at this. Okay. You've gone with who? So are you from New Zealand? Okay, so you can pick me up on pronunciation. That first word there, anyone? Whānau. You see, I put too many vowels in the middle of it. Sorry. But that is huge in the All Blacks. The first test to being an All Black is, are you an All Black? Are you one of us? Is your character aligned and congruent to what this team is? Then are you good enough? Being good enough without being part of our culture. Oh well, never mind. What a waste. But we've got plenty more, it seems. Part of this extended family is humility. So some of the best players ever to have played rugby won the last World Cup. When you look at Dan Carter, when you look at Richie McCaw, these are truly probably two of the best players that have ever played rugby. And at the end of every training session or every match, they pick up a broom and sweep the changing room floor, just like everybody else, because nobody's too big to sweep. I can't imagine many Premier League footballers doing that. Perhaps Sutton United, that's a different thing. But the point is, no one's bigger. If you ever hear an All Blacks post-match, the stick the mic in the player's face thing, you'll never hear them tell you how well they played, personally or as a team. You'll hear how well the opposition played and how they had to step up to have a chance to beat them, and how Italy are really bracing their game and it's making it a bigger challenge each time. They'll always talk about the context of the opposition, not themselves, because they have humility. They are the best at what they do, and I think everybody knows that. They don't need to tell anybody. Did I mention Ireland beat them last year? The first time in 100 years. The population of Wales is greater than the population of New Zealand. Ireland beat them for the first time in 100 years. Amazing. Stewardship. Dan Carter and Richie McCaw don't play anymore. Artie Surveyor's got a big shirt to fill, but his job is to take that number 7 shirt and make it better for Artie Surveyor having worn it. Never mind Richie McCaw used to wear it. I've got to take it from that place and move it on. It's not my shirt. I'm just borrowing it for a while. I'm looking after it, and I've got to take it on and look after it like everyone else did before me. We have a sense of higher purpose. It wasn't about winning the World Cup. That was just another game that was in front of us. Champions do extra. It's not good enough to be good. It's about being great. And you're never great, so you've got to keep getting better. Doesn't matter how, if some idiot in England is saying Richie McCaw used to be the best player in the world, he had to work at getting better to become great. Finding incremental ways to do more for the team, not for the individual, for the team. So leave it out on the field. It's about the jersey, it's not the person. There's a whole psychology thing, so they worked with their psychologist on keeping a blue head as opposed to a red head. That is, a red head, you're being reactive. You're responding to what's happening and you're doing whatever you think's necessary. Whereas a blue head, you're on task, you're doing what you intended to do, no matter what anyone else is doing. So you're being responsive, but not reactive. And they would all have physical triggers. So I've mentioned Richie. Richie McCaw used to get his head in the clouds every now and again, so he had to stamp his feet and get grounded again. The number 8 would have this habit of getting focused in the little details down here. So he'd stand and look at the most distant point in the stadium to remember that he needed to keep his head up and get the vision. So again, it's part of the psychology is remembering and those physical triggers to bring out a response and practicing and using the skills acquisition techniques I mentioned earlier so it becomes second nature, that you can snap out of that. Does anyone remember Johnny Wilkinson kicking goals for England? Do you remember what he used to do? He was there like that, wasn't he? Do you know what he was doing? So when he was a junior, his coach struggled with getting his head, because he was a very, very focused boy, is Johnny, out of what he was doing to calm him down enough to kick accurately. So he had a prop. He had a broomstick. And he'd hold on to his broomstick until he was ready to let it go, and then he could kick. And through his entire career, he held his broomstick. You've probably seen other kickers. There's a Welsh guy, Dan Bigger, who was kicking for them last year, and he would be giving it the whole jitters, trying to get himself calmed down. They all have their little routines and trying to get ready to do this. So it's all about the psychology of getting yourself ready for doing the thing you're going to do. And yeah, if you want to be an All Black, you better front up. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, because I focus on the word, it's Fanu? Fanu. That's why last year they started doing it in the spearheadship. They're doing the haka here, which is laying down the challenge. It was always done like just usually in a semicircle or something, but they really want to emphasize Fanu, which I believe the symbol for is the spearhead. And that's Richie McCaw, the captain at the front. He's not leading it, he is, but he's in the front of the family.
I thought that was a shade of the leaf from the New Zealand flag.
The fern? No, I believe it's a spearhead. I'm now really, really nervous.
Yeah, it's a spearhead. It's not
Thank you. It's terrifying when you stood and saying something as if you're like an authority figure on something, and you're like, I think this is right. You get a really imposter syndrome thing going on right there. So anyhow, that's the All Blacks. This is the Hurricanes, which is another Kiwi side. They won the Super Rugby last year, and that's on their changing room wall, as photographed from me off of my iPad on a train. That's the lines, sorry. But the strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. I think that's a Rudyard Kipling quote, of all people. But I stand to be corrected on that one. But that's on the changing room wall, hence really hard to Google. But I think that's a really important thing about rugby. It's about we are stronger united, we are together, we are in this. And I think that's something in Agile as well, that you see really good high-performance teams. And yeah.
So how do you coach people with big egos?
Okay, so it's about helping them learn that they're big by themselves, but they are more effective together. So I've got a young player, a 15-year-old boy. I want you to picture him now. Imagine somebody my size, only a little bit bigger and a lot fitter, very, very aggressive and very fast with fast feet. And that's young Josh. He's very good. He might even make it all the way. He might be one of those 0.001%. We'll see. It's up to his head, really, whether he is or isn't. But he loves running with the ball. He's fast, he's aggressive, he's almost impossible to put down. But boy, does he run for the corner flag every time and take away everyone else's space, which is terrible for the team. In rugby, it's really simple. We've got 15 players, they've got 15 players. If we can take up one extra one of their players and put our fast guy out on the wing and the outside centre next to him, so those two players against one defender, we're probably going to score a try. Let's make a 2-on-1. Is really what rugby's about. But I've got a prop who never lets the ball out of sight. He doesn't like to get involved in rucks because actually he then doesn't get the ball to carry. And when he does get the ball, he takes everyone's space away. So although he's making yards, he's not really helping the team. So I have a chat with him and say, you're a big lad, Josh. Wherever you run, 5 defenders from the opposition are going. That's 1/3 of the team are going to focus on you. Where do you want to put 1/3 of the team so that your team can score? And you could just see those little light bulbs of, it's okay, I want you running with the ball. It's a key strength. Why would I not use you running with the ball? But I want you to run with the ball in such a way that that guy out there happens to be the fastest boy in Surrey, and he's number 16 in the country, over 100 metres at his age group. It would be really quite good if we got the ball to him occasionally and let him run past everyone. And then you could get him and go, I don't have to run over there. That's good. Because we're all a bit lazy at heart. So yeah, that's what I'm exactly working on with that guy is, hey, it's about the team scoring, it's not about Josh scoring. You will look good for your Harlequins and Surrey selectors if you play your team role and then also add your extra value point of being able to run aggressively and score tries and move the defence around. And that's the key. It's showing people the other thing. It's showing them, yeah, it's not about me. At work recently, we had a team where we had an Agile team. They're fairly nascent. They've been doing it for a few months. They're doing great, but we have a business analyst who hands work, and then the back-end developer does their bit, and the front-end developer does their bit, and then the tester does their bit. And occasionally, it all works together, and occasionally we get what we want. But oh no, the back-end developer did his bit last week, and we can't change it now, even though the front-end developer needs something else. And that's a problem, right? We're focusing on my ego and me doing my thing right. So we went and played a game. We did a game-based exercise. We focused in on the key element. You see it's coming together now. We did whole, part, whole. They'd done whole, and we went and played a part. I used a game called the coin game, the coin flipping game. I don't know if you've come across it. It involves flipping 20 coins in 4 people, and you time them. It's a really cool game. And then we flipped over the name tags at the end from person A, B, C, and D to business analyst, back-end dev, front-end dev. And the whole point was individuals work best in big batches. but the team performance suffers massively. Team performance works really well in small batches, but individual performance suffers. So actually showing people it's okay for personal performance to drop as long as the team performance improves, and actually letting people see the goal. If they don't know what the goal is, how can they be aligned to it? It's like that arrows thing I showed, is not having the outside arrow. What we're trying to achieve is we get this unit of value, then this unit of value through the entire system. Not you do your bit really well and then blame someone else because they didn't have time to do their job yet. So absolutely, I mean, it depends on the context. There are some strategies, one from Rugby and one from Agile. But yeah, it's by doing things and setting the context and helping people understand what the goal really is. Because they often don't understand. It's like that masculinity thing I was mentioning earlier. Society often imposes on people what they think they're expected to do. I see that most with middle managers, actually. People who get promoted to managers, they don't often get a lot of help in being told what is expected of them. So they guess. And sometimes that's not good. Sometimes it is good. So helping them understand what's expected of them so they can be successful is the way forward, I think. You kept it up right to the end. I'm so proud of you. But that's what success looks like. So not so much this year, but that's the quarterback chucking the Gatorade on top of the coach because they've got the Super Bowl. Or got to the Super Bowl in that particular case. That's what success looks like. It's not necessarily performance success, but what they're doing to that coach is telling that coach, hey, you helped us. We scored all the points, but what you did caused it to happen. What you did helped us do our thing better. We respect you, we love you, we want to drench you in Gatorade. We want to humiliate you publicly on national TV. That's like the best photo ever, though. And that was my overrun talk. Thank you.